All right, so insurance companies. They have to make these massive billion-dollar guesses about what the future holds. How in the world do they do that? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of their most powerful tools, the collective risk model. So just imagine for a second, you're running an insurance company. You've got millions of policies out there. Millions. You know, some people are going to file a claim, but you have no clue who, or when, or for how much. So how can you possibly budget for your total payout for the year? That's the exact high-stakes question this whole collective risk model is designed to tackle. I mean, can you imagine trying to track every single policy one by one? It'd be an absolute nightmare. The big idea here, the real breakthrough, is a pretty simple but powerful shift in how you look at the problem. You just stop worrying about each individual person and start looking at the whole group. You guessed it, the collective of all your risks together. Okay, so here's the core concept, right? This whole model looks at the total payout. We'll just call it S for some. And it breaks it down into two distinct parts. First, you've got the random number of claims that come in. Let's call that N. And then you have the random size of each of those claims, which we'll call X. The really important part here is that we don't care who files the claim. All that matters is that a claim happened. And what's so beautiful about this approach is just how simple it is. It's like, instead of trying to solve one giant, impossible puzzle, you break it into two smaller, much more manageable pieces. So that first piece of the puzzle is all about frequency. We just ask, okay, how many claims are we probably going to get over the next year? You know, are we talking 10, 1,000, maybe 1,000,000? We build a model just for that. Then the second piece is all about severity. We ask a totally separate question. All right, when a claim does come in, how bad is it going to be? How big is that check we have to write? Is it a couple $100 or are we talking tens of thousands of dollars? So you see what we're doing? We model those two things separately, how many claims and how big the claims are. And then we just put them together to get the full picture. The total payout is just adding up all the individual claim sizes that actually happened. And this two-part strategy, this is where we get to the aha moment. It leads to this incredibly elegant and really powerful formula for figuring out the average total payout. Seriously? This takes all that complicated probability math and boils it down to something that just makes sense. Your expected total payout? It's just how many claims you expect multiplied by how big you expect each claim to be. That's it. And if you want to see what that looks like in math terms, it's just E of S equals E of N times E of X. The E just stands for expected value. So the expected total payout is the expected number of claims times the expected size of a claim. Super clean, totally logical, and just unbelievably useful. Okay, let's make this real. Let's say you look at your past data, and it tells you to expect about 50 claims next year. And on average, each claim costs you around $200. Well, your best guess for your total payout is, you guessed it, 50 times 200, that's $10,000. But, of course, the real world is a lot messier than that, right? So you have to think of this less as one single rigid formula and more like a flexible framework. It's like a toolkit, and you can plug in different statistical models, different distributions to describe how the claims are showing up, depending on what kind of risk you're looking at. So this gives us different flavors of the model for different jobs. For example, if claims just seem to happen randomly, independently, think car accidents, then something called a compound Poisson model is perfect. But if you have a fixed group, say a life insurance plan with exactly 100 people, then you'd use a compound binomial model. Why? Because you know for a fact you can't have more than 100 claims. And then, if your claims are just all over the place, totally unpredictable, there's another flavor called the compound negative binomial that works great for that. Now, out of all these different options, there's one that's a real favorite among actuaries, the people who do this for a living, and that's the compound Poisson. It has this one special kind of magical property. Okay, check this out. This is why it's so cool. Let's say you have one portfolio for car insurance, and it follows this compound Poisson pattern, and you have another totally separate portfolio for home insurance, and it also follows that pattern. Well, you can just add them together. And the new, giant, combined portfolio, it's still a compound Poisson risk. That is a huge deal because it makes modeling these gigantic, complex insurance companies so much easier. And look, this is way more than just some math problem in a textbook. This whole framework is the reason insurance companies can confidently figure out how much to charge you for your policy. And even more importantly, it's how they know how much money to keep in the bank, their reserves, to make absolutely sure they can pay out every single claim. It's literally fundamental to keeping them in business. So the real power here, the big takeaway, isn't in any one specific equation. It's the flexibility of the whole approach. It gives you a structured, logical way to think about and measure uncertainty. And it doesn't matter what kind of risk you're talking about. So if you remember one thing, it's this. This model gives you the complete picture. It's not just about guessing the total risk. It's about breaking it apart. It helps an insurance company figure out, hey, is our biggest problem getting tons and tons of small claims? Or is it the risk of getting just a few absolutely massive ones? And knowing the answer to that question, well, that's everything. It's how you price your products and make sure you've got enough cash stashed away to survive a really bad year. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. This amazing idea, separating how often something bad happens from how bad it is when it happens, it's the absolute bedrock of the entire insurance industry. But where else could we use it? What about modeling equipment failures in a huge factory? Or the number of customer support calls a tech company gets? Or even modeling the ups and downs of an investment portfolio? You start to realize the applications of this way of thinking could go way, way beyond what we've talked about today.